Hey guys, it's Sonia, and today I'm here to talk to you about Soundless by Richelle Mead. So, I read this book a couple months ago, and my memory is a little foggy, so I'm going to be relying heavily on my two-page notes that I wrote down about my thoughts on the book. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read it, and I just forgot to film it, and then I realized, what book have I read that I haven't done a review about? And I thought of Soundless. So, tangent aside, back on track. Quick recap of the book for those of you who haven't read it. So, the book is centered around this character named Faye, who is Chinese, and she is living in this this little city township that is located at the top of a mountain, and due to prior incident, they were landlocked because of an avalanche, and the people of Faye's society were also all deaf, so the entire community is communicating through sign language, and none of them can speak, and so this it's a very interesting dynamic. Because people in the township are starting to go blind, and so not enough metals are being mined, and therefore the township at the base of the hill isn't sending up enough food up, so the people in township are starving, going blind, and dying. And suddenly, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Faye regains her hearing. So she's the only one in this entire little town at the top of the hill who can hear. And so she and her comrade decide to go down the mountain and try to save her people and figure out how they're going to get more resources and survive. I give this book 4 out of 5, mainly because there wasn't much depth to the characters. It was very focused on the plot, and I know that this is based on Chinese folklore, so feeding off of that, the characters weren't as important as expressing the tale was. Understandable. But also the fact that it was a standalone book, there wasn't much, it was a little sparse. What I really loved about the book, though, was that just reading, not verbal, but symbolic communication was interesting. I mean, obviously it was like italicized text, but just, how the author managed to express the gestures, the facial expressions in combination with the bodily conversation that they were having was really interesting. And just imagining yourself devoid of your sense of hearing, and therefore your sense of speaking, your voice is a jarring sensation, and it was just really, really lovely to read how the author managed to work around that. It was really fascinating, and I loved reading it. Again, the book was kind of focused a little bit on Faye, and so there really wasn't much attachment. I didn't feel really attached to, I didn't really feel that connection with Li Wei, who was her friend who she went down the hill with, down the mountain with. Although she had feelings for him, I didn't really, feel that connection with his character. I felt like because Faye put so much value in her sister, Zhang Jing, I would have wanted to myself be a little more familiar with her sister as a character, but it's one book and it was focused around Faye's adventure, so I guess it's permissible. But the supporting characters weren't as whole as I would have liked them to be. Even Lao Chen would have been, I'm saying Lao Chen, but it's Elder Chen, but my 3 years of Chinese have taught me something. Elder Chen, I would have really liked to know him more. He seemed like such a understanding character, but again, it was like a couple of scenes and then at the end where he believed in her. Other than the main character, the characters weren't very engaging, but I guess that's mainly because it was a standalone novel and it was so focused on the folklore of it, which is fine. It was a really fascinating read. Also, the fact that it's diversified the genre. Like, you have got now an entire book of Asian characters. It's just makes me really happy to see diversity in the genre. So the township dynamics, based on the fact that they're all deaf, was heavily reliant on written communication and written documentation. So the news of the day was focused on the paintings that the students were making, and therefore art and writing were highly valued. And here we're going back again into history, where art and scribes and artists were highly valued due to documentation and the education that they go through, which is, I love it. Artists are being given importance, and I'm an artist, and it just makes me really happy. Yeah, that was a fascinating, just to see how much value they put into little details of a single painting to make sure that they depict the incident that happened perfectly. That was a new dynamic that was really, really engaging for me. Faye's adventure with Li Wei down the hill was like kind of terrifying. They don't have much of a support grappling down a sharp cliff. That was just terrifying. Like, imagine sitting on a tiny little ledge and having lunch while looking down upon the sharp fall to the bottom of. Oh my god. Also, another thing I found really, really cool was the other township that they happened upon, the abandoned one. Just like, imagine coming upon an abandoned city and realizing this is our future. If we don't do anything, this is exactly where we're going to end up. That is horrifying. And so, another thing about the linguistics of the township was that when they come into the township and they meet that girl in the tavern of sorts, and she has learned sign language from the other community that managed to escape from the mountains, just seeing how the language tends to diverge from certain points is just a really interesting analysis of sign language and just a metaphor for how languages develop, like how the Romantic languages fractured into Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, French, and the development of the exploration of sign language and language in general was, I really love that. I'm a big liberal arts, language arts, fine arts buff, and those aspects of this novel were just the best to read. Skipping on to the final part, because it's been a while and I don't recall much. So skipping on to the final battle. So the king in the township hears of Faye and Li Wei appearing in the town, and he's like, oh no, she can hear, that's not good. We gotta go get all the gold we can and then kill these guys off. And that was horrible, and he's apparently been hoarding gunpowder all this while, and he manages to get in, and like, how cruel do you have to be to not to leave a community trapped up there to die and suck them all off of all of their resources? Like, do you know how much more beneficial mutual cooperation is? Like, what kind of an idiot are you to not want to share resources? Like, what? So Faye climbs up that frickin' mountain. She goes up that mountain. She, on her own. Like, that's just nuts. And so she's up there trying to gain back the trust of her sister and the entire township who hates her. And this entire community that's been built on peaceful, silent communication is brought to fisticuffs, and it's just very indicative of how ingrained human fear is in physical reactions. High school book analysis has, like, affected me real bad. Skipping forward in the final battle, where they're all of the people in the township are lined up and they're forcing people in to finally mine out everything. The description of their collective scream, that was it brought me to tears reading that, because it was such an emotive moment for an entire township of people to let out their voices without knowing what they sound like. And the description of it, just reading the description of what it's like to hear such a mournful sound for the first time, really got to me, and that was so beautifully written. I really liked that. Props to Richelle Mead for this. It was so well done. That final battle scene was just beautiful. When the mythical creatures came back to help fight off the soldiers and protect the people that were living in the township, was, I think, I don't know, was that supposed to be the climax, or was the collective scream supposed to be the climax? Because the final reveal of the mythical creatures was a little anticlimactic for me. The collective scream was like, what? Got to me. Yeah, the mythical creatures coming in and saving the township was a little anticlimactic for me. The final reveal of the mythical creatures was a little anticlimactic. The simple dynamic of the deaf community and the township trying to save itself was far more fascinating than introducing these mythical creatures in the end. Like, if I believe that wasn't the central point of the book. The central point of the book was following the characters, but the inclusion of that myth of those creatures, I think, could have been handled a bit more. It was more of a struggle of them finding resources and survival than it was about the tale of the myth. If Faye had more dreams about the creatures, or texts about them had cropped up here and there, it would have been a little more of like a build-up of tension to finally see these characters, but there wasn't much of that. So, but I thought the book as a whole was frankly a great read. Skipping back a little bit, the scorpion challenge, when they're at the tavern and the challenge was to pass a scorpion 10 times between your hands, and Li Wei takes on the challenge, and he has an advantage due to the fact that he can't hear. It was just a very pleasant moment of seeing that sometimes what majority of the world considers a handicap can be a great asset, and that was just like a wonderful scene to read. I really liked that. It was a beautiful thing to read, to see how a community functions without two of the things that we value the most, our voice and our sense of hearing, and just how priority of what's important in a community to function changes. That was just really fascinating to read, and just to read a book that is centered around a different culture and to read about Chinese folklore was just a really fun thing. I really enjoyed this book. Great book. Let me know what you thought about this book down below in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, you know, whatever you want to do. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye!